Welcome to the Bike Talk with Dave podcast. I'm your host, Dave Mabel, and I really appreciate you tuning in. I've known this week's guest, Jenna Rinehart, for more than a decade. Maybe I should say I've known of Jenna Rinehart for more than a decade. That's not to say she knew me, but as the legendary Queen of Chequamegon, everyone who has raced in the Northwoods knew of her. I could definitely fill in the blanks that I'm leaving out about her cycling career and cycling life, but I'm pretty sure you're tuning in to hear her tell her story and how she went from skiing at a small Midwest ski area to competing and finishing in the top 10 at the Lifetime Grand Prix. I had the opportunity to meet her earlier this year at Unbound, and it was fun to reconnect at Chequamegon. I couldn't be more excited for you to get to know her over the next hour. And with that, let's welcome Jenna Rinehart. Jenna Rinehart, what a treat to have you here on Bike Talk with Dave. I have to laugh. I want to talk about Chequamegon a little bit later in our conversation, but I totally know you from Chequamegon because you're a legend there, right? You grew up racing at Chequamegon and you did really, really well. We're going to talk about that in a bit. But every year, as Dee and I, we race tandem, and we've been racing tandem since 2002.
Wow.
And seems like every year, coming across the finish line, they're already doing the podium on those stumps right by the finish line in the big bowl. And it was either Catherine Wahlberg's name we heard or Jenna Rinehart for many years. So we've known you for a long, long time, much longer than you've known us, because you were already showered, took a nap, back on the podium, and we are just making our way into telemark to the finish line. So it's a pleasure to kind of get to know you this year from Unbound. We can talk about that in a little bit, but kind of fun crossing paths. So, hi, Jenna.
For sure. Hi. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be on the show.
I want to go a little bit into your history because I think you have an interesting one, and to see your name on the Lifetime Grand Prix list, I had to do a double or triple take because you haven't been racing for a long time. But as I said, we've been racing that tandem at Chequamegon for 20 some years, and your name is synonymous with Chequamegon for us. And then it wasn't. And the reason it wasn't was a little diversion called owning a bike shop, which I want to talk about. But first of all, tell me about your first era of bike riding, bike racing.
Yeah, for sure. I first kind of got into riding at about 15 years old. I grew up downhill ski racing, and our ski area, Mankato, it's very small, but we also had mountain bike trails in the summer, and I did some running in high school, cross-country, track, kind of typical background of, it seems like a lot of cyclists, but had some injuries and some stress fractures, and had seen these mountain bike trails when I was, on the ski hill in the winter. You'd go on the chairlift and you could see the trails still in the woods.
You grew up going up the chairlift, looking at mountain bike trails, looking at them wantonly?
Yeah, I loved downhill ski racing, but I think I found I was actually better at endurance sports, and we didn't have cross-country ski racing or cross-country skiing in my town, but I think that would have maybe been a good sport for me. We just had downhill ski racing, so I did that because I was competitive, but also liked the endurance sports from running. So I think when I tried mountain biking, it was the perfect combination for me. It had the elements of thrill of going downhill and needing some skill, but also you had to work for it and earn those turns and go uphill too. So yeah, I started at 15 and we had a state series race. So the Minnesota State Series was kind of mountain bike races all over the state, and one of the races always came to Mankato. So I kind of got introduced to mountain bike racing. My first year of riding, I pretty much just jumped right into doing some races. And spent a bunch of years doing the Minnesota series, and then also Wisconsin had a really big it was the largest state series in the country. It's called the Wars series. So I would go back and forth each weekend. Usually it would alternate between Minnesota races one weekend and Wars races the next weekend. And did a lot of that. There wasn't a lot of kids my age at that, like doing it, especially for women. I think there was a lot of women that were about 10 to 15 years older than me racing, not a lot of 15-year-olds, but it was great. There was a lot of good racers to look up to, and I kind of did that for a few years and then got more into it and met my now husband, Justin, who was at a higher level racing. He raced kind of nationally as a junior, and then as a semi-pro for the Sobey Cannondale team back in the day, and he was going to these national races all over the country, and he was also a ski racer, so we kind of met that way. And then I started going to some other races with him, some national races, and got into it that way. And then went out east and did some big races, and saw like roots and rocks that I'd never seen before. I remember going to Snowshoe and Mount Snow, Vermont, and wondering how the heck you're supposed to ride some of that stuff, because we didn't have a lot of that in our trails in Minnesota. But learned while I was racing, and kind of worked my way up. I ended up getting my pro upgrade at age 21, I think, 20 or 21. And then went through college, raced nationally for a bunch of years, and ended up winning the U23 cross country XC national championship my last year of U23, and that got me the opportunity to go to the World Championships that year for the U.S. national team, and then also the Pan American Championships. So got to do a little bit of international racing as well. And then after that, I graduated college and tried to kind of make a go of just racing pro for a while, but there wasn't a lot of opportunities available, especially for women. It was definitely a bigger difference of what kind of opportunities there were for men, the men at the time versus women. It wasn't great for anyone, but it was definitely a lot harder. And so, eventually kind of got to the point where I had to kind of decide what I wanted to do with my life after college, and still loved bike racing, but also had to think about my future. And that's kind of where the bike shop came into play.
That's cool. And you and Justin were married at the time when you bought that shop?
We were, yes.
Yeah. So that was, it's more than a dozen years ago that you guys dove into that.
Yeah.
First question I have is, two questions. Mankato State?
Yep.
Did you stay home?
I did, yeah. That's how we kind of paid for our bike racing all over the country. Was we went to school, but lived at home while we went to school, and worked part-time jobs and in the winter and spring, and then spent all summer kind of traveling with a group of a couple other people from the upper Midwest, and hit up all the national races. One year we had a trailer that we stayed in, and then one year our friend got an RV, and we had piled 6 people into an RV, and did it the cheap way.
I'm sure that smelled awesome by the end of the trip.
It was, very interesting.
And what was your degree in?
I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I went to school. And so I ended up actually getting a business degree. I kind of changed. I was going to do accounting, and then I switched and was going to do marketing, but I ended up with human resource management, kind of with a business with a human resource emphasis. So
I feel like the bike shop is perfect.
It is. My husband was like, if you don't know what you want to do, business is not a bad idea, because everything out there is a business technically, whether it's a hospital or anything. So, yeah, it gives you, I think, a good general background for a lot of things.
Yeah. I would say though, like, I feel like the road for most people is not like, hey, I need a job, so I'm going to go buy a bike shop. They're like, hey, I need a job, so I'm going to go like send my resume out and interview and get a job. How did you end up buying the bike shop? What transpired there?
Yeah, it was, so the bike shop has been around for quite a while. It started in 71-ish or so. And it started in a town just west of our town. Actually, it was a small community called Nicollet, and that's why it's actually called Nicollet Bike and Ski still. So we've kind of kept the name even though it's moved locations. But yeah, they started, so the couple that started it were school teachers full-time, and then they started it as like a summer thing. And then when they retired from school teaching, they kind of, it grew more and more over the years, and they kind of kept focusing on it and kept getting bigger and bigger. Well, my husband started out working there when he was about 15 years old as well, and just part-time through high school, and then through college he worked part-time as well, so like in between bike racing and school. And then when he was done with college, he also had gotten a business degree in finance, but he worked there full-time for a couple years after college. And the owners were getting ready to retire. They never really intended to do that forever because they were already retired from school teaching. And so the opportunity was there. I had worked out there a little bit part-time in college a little bit, but not as much as Justin, my husband, did. And so, yeah, I look back at it now and think we were probably crazy. We were, I think, 26 and 27 when we bought it. But, yeah, the opportunity was there. We didn't really know what we wanted to do. Justin, that's kind of the only job he'd ever had was working at the bike shop pretty much. He'd had a couple other small jobs, but we knew that I'd done some other jobs, some small jobs over the years, worked in a pharmacy for a little bit and a restaurant, and kind of knew that I didn't want to do those type of jobs, and something that like we were passionate about already was very interesting. And then having business degrees, we definitely had some interest in the business side of things as well. So figured if we can combine our passion and our degrees a bit and allow us to maybe still keep in the bike industry in some sort of way, whether we're racing or working in it, was a big part of it.
When I was in college, all the guys I hung out with on my dorm floor, it's like, never meet your crush, because then they become real human beings and all the flaws rise to the surface. Is that true in buying a bike shop and working in your passion?
Yeah, I mean, it's very challenging at times. Like, I think with any small business, there was a lot of years where we worked really hard. I would say we learning how to like suffer in bike races and push yourself really hard almost helped in the business side of it too, because we were willing to put in really long hours and kind of suffer through some hard times, and whether you're short-staffed or just unseasonable weather changes and then going through the whole pandemic. And so yeah, there was a lot of different ways we were pushed. In some ways it does feel very different than the racing side of it. It's still bikes, but it's when we bought the shop, I only really knew the bike racing side of the sport. I didn't know as much about the recreational side, or just all the different types of ways you could use a bike and ride a bike. So that was a big learning curve for me, and it does feel sometimes very different, the conversations I'm having at the shop with helping people get into riding either for the first time or maybe they haven't ridden a bike for 20 years. And then I go to these bike races in the pro fields and it's all about aero this and what tires are you running, and so it does kind of feel different too. You can separate it for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Are you working the sales floor?
That's a good question. So when we bought the shop, there was many years where you were just doing whatever needed to be done. I was never really like a mechanic. I mean, I can change a flat tire and do basic things, but I was never, I would write up a lot of the repairs sometimes when we first started, but yeah, I am on the sales floor now mostly on just like busy days or when we're short staffed. I definitely do a little more behind the scenes. So I do our payroll and like all of our books and scheduling and some ordering with vendors. But yeah, when we first bought it, we were just kind of doing everything.
You do whatever you have to do, right?
Yeah, it took a good, solid 10, 12 years to get to a point where I don't have to be on the sales floor all the time, and that's helped me get back to being able to race more. I'm not on my feet all day or having to be the main one greeting all the customers. I can work remotely a little bit from home or schedule my training a little bit more around work a bit.
Cool. Since we're on the subject, give it a plug. Where are you guys at? How do people find you? What do they find there? Tell me about your shop.
Yeah, so it's called Nicollet Bike and Ski Shop. It actually started out just a bike shop, and then 4 or 5 years ago we added skis to it as well. We are very familiar with skis and have ski area in our town, but never had sold skis until recently. So yeah, we are located in Old Town Mankato, like right along close to the river, a couple of blocks from the river, in our kind of downtown Old Town section of town. So yeah, you can find bikes, all sorts of bikes, road bikes, gravel bikes, mountain bikes, lots of hybrids and lots of e-bikes, and then skis as well.
Awesome. And do you guys lead any rides that people could join?
We do, yes. We usually always have a weekly Tuesday night ride that is road bikes in the summer, and then in the fall and spring it's gravel, and then in the winter we do fat bike. So it kind of just changes as the season changes. And then in the summer we'll do like a Saturday morning gravel ride, and then we do a couple like monthly rides as well. We have one that's called like a slow roll, where it's a really cool just a slow ride through town where we'll get, I think we're trying to get 100 people. We've had close to I think the last one was 80 or so. But it's all abilities. We go 10 miles an hour or less, very casual, and 10 miles or less, and it's just a loop through town. And then we start at the shop and finish at a brewery, and it's a great way just to kind of ride bike in a different way and get all sorts of abilities together and see town a little bit on a bike. So, yeah.
That sounds kind of cool. I like that. I mean, so many of the rides are like make your eyes bleed. And a slow roll sounds like super fun social ride. How do people find out when that is?
Yeah, we usually, on our website and then social media pages, we usually keep people updated on. So that's usually the first Friday of every month. And then we do a couple of special event ones. We'll do a Halloween themed one where people can wear costumes for it. And then we also do a Christmas light one in December. So
perfect.
Yeah.
That sounds super cool. I like that. And everybody listening in other towns around the country, put a slow roll on the calendar. I think that sounds neat. All right, so I want to talk about Lifetime Grand Prix. But before we do, I want to talk about Chequamegon. And I know I always heard your name as Dee and I were coming into the bowl, crossing the finish line, and you're doing the podium and jumping up on those stumps. But I read, and is this true? 7-time winner? 7?
It is, yeah. I've done
Holy
it
moly.
A lot, but yeah, 7 wins. So
that's awesome. Who is ever going to break that? That is incredible.
Yeah. Gone a little.
Do you remember your first Chequamegon?
I do. Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, my first one was 2007, and that was back when it was the mass start, and started in downtown Hayward. I don't think I'd ever really done a big mass start race like that before. So I was a little nervous about the start, and the women's race was always interesting because you never always really knew how you were doing or what place you were in. But that year, several of those years, Trek would bring their factory team to the race. So there was always some big names. It wasn't as big or as deep as a field as what you see now, but there were still some very top names there. So that year it was Sue Haywood and Leah Davison were the two women that were on the Trek factory team. So definitely a very stacked field. And yeah, I ended up winning it the first year I did it. And I wasn't the favorite to win. And it was ended up being, for a mass start race like that, usually the women would get more spread out because it would just depend on, what group of fast training guys you could get on and hide from the other women. But it was actually a really exciting race, and the top three of us finished within 14 seconds of each other that year.
Oh my.
So that was pretty
Were
cool.
you racing together during the thing?
So Sue and I were together until Fire Tower, and she attacked me on Fire Tower, and I couldn't go with her. And I think this was actually one of the coldest Chequamegons I did too, because I look back at pictures and I had like long sleeves and leg warmers on, so it must have been pretty chilly that year. But anyway, she attacked on Fire Tower, and I thought, oh, that's the last of it. Well, I ended up catching her, I think, a mile before the finish or something, and she had kind of blown up, and passed her and went as hard as I could, and hadn't really ever raced it before, so I wasn't exactly sure, what it felt like dropping down into that bowl at the end. And well, in the meantime, I guess Leah had been in a group behind us chasing us all day, and when we finished, she was right there all of a sudden, because we were all within 14 seconds, so we had no clue that she was that close. You just didn't really know who was who, because we were mixed with the guys. And so that was definitely my first one, and probably the most memorable one as well.
That's awesome. That's funny, because I was going to say, okay, tell me about your first one. Okay, now tell me about your first win. Oh, we just condensed that into one little conversation there. That's awesome. Yeah. I literally got goosebumps you telling me that story, because all those areas I know, and I just have to laugh. I have to laugh because, like, she attacked me going up Fire Tower. There's no attacking in our world. It's like our whole goal is to just get up Fire Tower. This year we did it, I think, for the second or third time, literally in 20 years. My first year was 99. I got up it once before we jumped on tandem 4 years later. And without putting a foot down, without walking. I think this is our second time completely without putting a foot down in like 20 years. So when you say attacked us on Fire Tower, I just have to laugh, because in context, everybody behind you just wants to get up the dang thing. There's no attacking. It's like, can we just put this behind us and see if we can make it up this dang thing? It's awesome.
Yes.
And then a mile to go. I remember one year we come over a hill. It's the last little bump where we kind of got to grind, and we're on a tandem, and so you lose all momentum super quickly. And our pedals just kind of went limp, and I looked down and back, and I just see our chain snaking off of the back of our, off of our drivetrain. Oh, no. And we're like, it's a mile to go. Do we stop and fix it? And we're both just like, run! And so we ran the rest of the way in from exactly a mile to go. So I love Chequamegon and all the memories. Two more questions. One, I'm sure you didn't have to fill out an entry form in January and put it in an envelope with 4 other people and send it off and hope you were picked in the lottery. Could you just call Gary and say, Gary, I want to race, and get in?
Yeah, so when you would win it, you would get, part of your prize was an entry for the next year covered. So that was always nice, little perk there. And then I think Trek would usually give like a bike away or something for the winner. But Yeah, I have gotten to know Gary really well over all the years of racing, and it's so cool to see him still volunteering at the events every year. You see him at parking people, and then you see him on course after Fire Tower, and so.
Do you actually see him after Fire Tower?
This year he told me, because I actually lost my water bottle this year, and I was searching for like anyone that had water, but I guess he was there. I didn't see him, but I have seen him there other years, but he said he was there. So
he was. I actually said hi to him as we went around that corner because I knew that's where he was going to be, but it is super fun to see him out there, and he did such a great job with that race for so many years and is so kind and humble. He's just a delight for sure. Yeah. But that first year, did you have to like beg to get in, or was it pretty automatic?
I was actually supposed to do it in 2006, and I had separated my shoulder a couple weeks before, so I had to skip it that year. So I don't really remember I don't really remember. But once I then won it in 2007, then I think it was.
Well, you were in for sure.
I had to do the lottery really to get in it, but.
With 7 wins, you probably have a permanent invitation.
I'm not sure. Yeah, it's a special place, so I just love to get up there as much as I can.
So the Lifetime Grand Prix, Chequamegon is part of the Lifetime Grand Prix, which I find super interesting. Been a lot of changes. You guys, and when I say you guys, I mean the pro field starts. Oof. Listen, the mass of all the people, we still start in town and we ride the highway out. It's about 3 miles, and we take a right onto a little macadam road, and then we turn left onto the Berkey and go straight up a hill. And oh man, that's just hard. But we have a 3-mile warm-up. You guys start right at the base of that hill. What is that like?
It's brutal.
I can't imagine.
I actually like it. It doesn't feel good to start that way, but my background is more cross-country mountain bike racing, so shorter races, 2 hours or so. Cross-country races have gotten shorter since I used to race at that level, but so it feels a little more natural to me to start like that than how some of the gravel races start. It does feel pretty like a safer start, even though it's hard. Usually it kind of spreads people out a little bit better. You're going straight uphill and thick grass, and so it's brutal. But there has been some pretty bad crashes on the road. It is cool to start in downtown Hayward, and I have great memories of that too, but I also have really bad memories of seeing some really horrific crashes and hearing people sliding on pavement. So I don't miss. It was a cool start, but I don't miss that part of it.
Yeah, fair enough. Good to know. I've been interested in that juxtaposition. We kind of miss having you there, but I for sure. We're not in the front. We're not in gate 1. And so there's a lot of people in front of us, and we almost every year see somebody either on the side of the road after picking themselves up or still on the road, mostly going around that corner onto the highway by Walmart there, where it's a divided road.
Yeah, every year. I think every year there was a pretty bad crash. I always would feel a sigh of relief if I could just make it to Rosie's Field and hit the dirt, and then I'm like, okay, we're on the dirt. Like, I made it this year. So it's hard because the start is so cool how you start like that with a mass of people, but it's hard when there'd always be people from wave 2 that would be trying to move up to wave 1 thinking they were gonna win the race in the first couple miles of the pavement rollout.
It's all about the whole shot.
So it's change is kind of hard, but sometimes it's for the better for some of those things. So.
Yep. Do you miss Rosie's Field?
Yeah. I mean, when I always experienced it, it was like just trying to hang on to a group of guys, and you had no idea where the other women were, and so it was good and bad experiences. It was kind of just like hanging on for dear life till you got popped off a group, and then you'd get onto another one. And what I miss the most is the finish of dropping down into the bowl, how we did where telemark was. I just have such good memories of that, getting to those last few climbs, and then like you just get to drop down, and then if you were close to someone, you had that little bit of a riser to the finish, but in the roar of the crowd when you'd kind of come in. So I do miss that a little bit.
We definitely do too. And it's way different this year. It used to be you'd kind of come off, I don't know, Randy Shack Road or however you say that, onto a little section of narrow gravel, and then you dive into the woods and you have 2 miles to go, and it was kind of like your momentum worked for those whole entire 2 miles. Like you could hammer it, right? Maybe one or two little climbs, one where we lost our chain, but just short little punchy things. But mostly just hammer it. You got 2 miles to go and you're almost done. It was 8 miles from that section, and it was hard. How'd you feel about that last 8 miles?
Yeah.
Did you know about it? Were you familiar with it?
So they actually changed the course pretty significantly last year. They got rid of the Lake Helene section, and that made Fire Tower come a lot sooner in the race. And so it was very strange last year. I wasn't really sure. In the past, when you could kind of go on Fire Tower, you're maybe not quite 3/4 through the race, and then you had the Berkey Rollers or the Seven Sisters after that, and you kind of always knew what you had left. So last year was a big change, just kind of being like, whoa, we're like not that far into the race yet. Like I probably should save a little bit and make sure I can make it to the finish. But I do like the narrower, I think they call it the sleigh trail, the stuff at the end of the race now. I like that. It's a little bit narrower and twistier, so that's fun, but it's just different, I guess, of where Fire Tower hits and where those Seven Sister Berkey Roller section is. So I dig it. It's we had ridden it, so we knew how long it was, but holy moly, it was still hard. And I think just mentally, because it's like, no, I want to turn right there. I want to go down that trail and go home. But you're not. You've got 8 more miles to go. But and of course we're on Chequamegon. You didn't add number 8 this year. Like Lifetime, part of the Lifetime Grand Prix. And I don't know what else. I think it's money. Has brought a deep and rich field to Chequamegon. So you didn't come home with win number 8 this year. How'd your year go this year? Yeah, it's definitely gotten a lot harder to win Chequamegon than it used to, but that's okay. I am just fine with that because I never thought I would have the opportunity to race Chequamegon like how Chequamegon's always raced for the guys, but with a whole field of women. So that's just been a really incredible experience. And that's kind of what got me back into, I think, racing more again was when the Lifetime Grand Prix came to Chequamegon 2 years ago. I wasn't in the Grand Prix, but I was doing Chequamegon and got to experience racing it with just such a deep field of women. And it made me realize, like, wow, I miss racing at this level, and how fun that was. But this year I was definitely hoping for more. I got caught in a crash just before Double O on which I was maybe sitting too comfortably in the group, but you try to be in the front of the group, but you can't be in the front of the group the whole time. And so we were on a gravel road thinking, okay, we're just on a plain gravel road, what could happen? And a couple of riders bumped wheels in front of me and went down, and I had nowhere to go but right over the top and over the bars, and crashed, and then lost the front group, which maybe I'd like to say I could have chased back on, but I didn't. When you have a couple Olympians on the front and a really stacked field, it's so hard, and that was a very fast part of the race. So when I got back going again, it was just didn't quite have it to get to try to get back on. And then I lost my water bottle that I just got at Double O right after Double O, so I didn't have anything to drink from basically double O to the finish. So that made for my day just even harder. But happy to still finish it, but just a little bit bummed that I was really hoping to try to be there for some sort of sprint with one of the front couple groups. But sometimes with racing, you need some luck on your side, and some days it's just not meant to be. So.
Yep, for sure. Coming back next year?
For sure, yeah. I think, I'll always come to the Northwoods, and I've done Chequamegon for most years since I first did it. I took a couple of years off there, but yeah, it's a special place, and I love it. So I hope to be back again next year.
Sweet. We'll look for you at the finish line.
Yes.
And I will give you a Bike Talk with Dave stocking cap if you finish before us.
Okay, sounds good. I don't know. That might be hard. You get a couple hours out there.
We could lose a chain and have to run home. Don't know.
It's true.
And we are definitely not getting younger for sure. So Chequamegon's part of the Lifetime Grand Prix, and you are in Lifetime Grand Prix for your second year. I think I looked, you're currently in 13th overall out of the entire slate of, I know 35 started. There's still 35 people kind of competing, or some people, should we say 30?
This year actually there was 30 in this year. 30 women, 30 men. Last year it was 35.
Okay.
They brought it back down to 30.
Okay. I mix those.
I think for the most part, there's maybe a couple that have had either an injury or something that's taken them out. But
it's a long season for sure.
Yeah.
What made you want to do that? The Lifetime Grand Prix. Like how did you end up? I mean, I know you did well at Chequamegon, and then everybody's like, "Oh, Jenna Rinehart's back," but that doesn't mean you have to apply and do the Lifetime Grand Prix. What incented you to jump into Lifetime Grand Prix or apply to be in Lifetime Grand Prix?
Yeah, good question. I think, a couple of years ago, so it was 2022, when I didn't do a lot of racing, but I did do Chequamegon, and the Grand Prix was there, so that was my kind of first time in a long time getting to race in a deep women's field, and I just realized how fun it was and how much I missed it. I like racing with the guys too, but to get to race with women that are, I don't know, a little more similar to you or on your level, instead of just trying to hang on for dear life to each wheel you can, was just such a fun experience. But Chequamegon's very different than a lot of the other Grand Prix events. So I'm not sure. A few people kind of mentioned to me, I think, like, you should try the Grand Prix next year. And I did follow it. I've always, even when I wasn't racing for a long time, I was still a fan of the sport, and especially women's cycling, followed everything and was very intrigued by, I do love gravel too. I didn't do a lot of gravel racing before the Grand Prix, but I'd always ridden gravel before anyone talked about gravel or gravel was a thing. I think we were just riding it in the Midwest for years, because that's where we have a lot of gravel roads, and I always felt like it was better training on gravel for mountain bike racing than training on the road, because you, I don't know, got to kind of fatigue your legs in a little bit different ways, and had more to focus on, like picking your line a little bit versus just the plain road. But yeah, I guess some of the races in the Grand Prix were ones that were kind of big iconic races that were like, well, those would be maybe cool to like try sometime and just say you did, or like before I'm completely done racing. Like I always actually said I was never going to race Leadville, but and then when I got in the Grand Prix, then I was like, oh crap, I'm like, why do I want to race at altitude and that long? But so just applied, and I was kind of like not sure if I would get in for sure or not, because I didn't have like a lot of recent results, but I did do pretty good at Chequamegon that year. So got in and found myself having to ride a lot, do a lot more volume, big endurance rides to get ready for some of these big races.
Yeah, that's a big transition, especially from like you grew up doing the wars races, the Minnesota series. Like mountain bike races are typically, I don't know, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours for a long one. Chequamegon used to be considered a marathon, which kind of cracks me up because it's like freaking criterium now. Um, was it a hard transition to? I, I mean, all your races are like 130, 150, 200 miles. Of course, except for Chequamegon, Leadville's 100, little short 100 miler there in the mountains. But was it a big transition to go to those long races after racing the, super high intensity, super high heart rate mountain bike races?
Yeah, I think for sure it was a lot of learning for me. I think having ridden bike for a long time, even when I wasn't racing super competitively all those years when we owned the shop, I was still riding. I love to ride whether I'm racing or not. So I think years of just time on the bike helped with that transition to doing some of these longer events because my body was used to riding. I just had to increase the volume a little bit. But the biggest learning thing for me was like the nutrition side of it on the bike, like eating and learning. In a cross country race, you can get away with not really eating correctly. I mean, you have to fuel yourself some, but if you're not keeping up with it, your race is over before it really, really catches up with you. Where these long events, if you get behind, like you're really gonna pay for it. Last year, when the first year of my Grand Prix at Unbound, I experienced not feeling. I actually took in too much too quickly and got sick and had some stomach issues, which I'd never really experienced. I just thought, oh, more is better, and just keep putting it in. And if you get behind, you're in trouble. So yeah, that was a learning experience, and I think last year I kind of just winged it and didn't really still fully understand it. I started paying attention to, what are these things? Carbs, you got to add up how many carbs an hour and whatnot. But this year I'm actually I have a nutrition sponsor, Martin, which has been super helpful. Getting to talk with them and then just actually planning it out better for the races. Planning out what I'm going to take exactly has been a huge help with these.
I have to humble myself. I haven't understood the feed. I'm like, go to the store and buy, some, I don't want to use brand names, some shot blocks, some goos, some whatever, throw some carbohydrate and salt drink in your water bottle and go and eat, throw some of those things in now and again. And I was talking with Matt Zimmer. He's a professional roadie who lives in town here. And I was like, I just don't get the feed. And he's like, dude, the feed is genius. Like, that food has made all of it's why people are so fast now, is because they're planning out their food and they're following that plan, and they're not bonking, they're not dying, they're always fueled, they're not over fueled. And I was like, oh, right. Okay, that makes sense. And sounds like that's kind of what you found, like the fueling matters.
Not just for racing, but for training, I figured that out too. I think all those years we do, 3-4 hour, those were our like long training days back then. And you felt like if you weren't totally smashed and laying on the floor when you're done, or in the kitchen right when you finish, looking for any food you could find, that I kind of thought that was how you're supposed to feel and normal. And I've learned a lot, especially this year, that when you actually fuel yourself during the ride enough when you're training, you come back and you shouldn't feel just raging hungry and, totally like you can't move or, so that, I just thought, all those years of racing, I think nobody really talked about it that much, or nobody knew, but yeah, we just never were fueling ourselves enough on the ride, and you ride till you're basically bonked and ride ride home cross-eyed a little bit, and then you just be worthless the rest of the day. So
Yeah, 100%. You just described my life. Um, Tell me about Martin.
yeah, that has been huge help for me this year. They have unique technology. It's called like hydrogel, which is a substance that allows you to take in more carbs without upsetting your stomach so much. So when it
Wow.
hits your stomach, the acid of your stomach, it kind of walls itself off and goes to the small intestine and then gets released there. So it doesn't, I think with sometimes just other forms of carbs, if you take them in too quickly, they can sit in your stomach. And actually at Unbound last year is where I got kind of a gut rot because it wasn't making its way to my small intestine. My power was just kind of dropping and my stomach kind of got bloated, and it was just all, I took it in too quickly because everyone knows about the mud section of Unbound 2 years ago, but that section ended up being super long and crazy. And when I got out of it, I realized, oh, wow, we're this far into the race and I hadn't eaten anything because I was just so focused on trying to get through the mud. And so I took it in super fast and then had issues with actually getting it to where it needs to go. So yeah, Martin has been great. It's sometimes in these really long races you can get, or at least for me, I would get kind of sweeted out, like too much sweetness, and I'd just be so sick of it, where Martin has some sweetness too, but it's a pretty mild kind of, they don't have like all these different flavors. They're pretty just like simple ingredients and simple basic flavors, which has been easy for me to take in, and I don't really get too sick of it even when you're out there for 7-8 hours. So
We all know what you mean when you say gut rot, for sure. And if there's a way to get rid of that or not have that and still fuel like you know you need, then that's genius. That's awesome.
yeah, it's
I
I'm
mean,
still learning little bits here and there, and like with the really hot races, I think you got to adjust a little bit. This year at Unbound, I maybe pushed it a little bit with how many carbs I was trying to take in, and then I think at some point when you're out there for over 6, 7, 8 hours, like then you kind of need to think about taking in a little bit more water too over time too, just to balance it out. But so yeah, still kind of practicing, but I'm definitely steps ahead of where I was the year before, just learning about it. So.
that's awesome. And I love that you've been around for, I don't know, a couple minutes racing your bike, and you're still learning and open to new technology and new ways of thinking. And as an old guy, like, I appreciate that. And that's a good lesson for me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So you are in 13th this year currently. Last year you finished 6th. There are 2 races to go. How do you feel about moving up into the top 10?
Yeah, the points structure is definitely a little bit different this year, and how they're kind of showing the results is a little bit different right now. So I was in 7th going into Chequamegon, and then was really hoping for a podium spot in the Grand Prix at that race, but obviously it didn't go as I'd hoped, which moved me back to 13th. But currently what they're showing on the leaderboard is only 2 of your best results right now. So so this year the Grand Prix is one less race than it was last year because Crusher was canceled for wildfires. So instead of it being 5 of your best 5 of 7, it's your best 4 of 6. So I have 2 races left. I have 3 races completed. Let's see, Sea Otter, Unbound, Leadville, and 4 races completed. So I try not to focus. I think you can't, the series is so hard and so long and so much can happen that I try to just kind of look at each individual race a little bit more. But of course, finishing in the top 10 is always a goal for a lot of us, but sometimes you need not just the fitness, but luck on your side as well. Like Big Sugar is the final, and last year, or I think several years, you can see that anything can happen at that race. There's so many mechanicals and flat tires. And last year I got a rock stuck in my frame and ended up actually damaging my frame a little bit, but I had to get that out because my tire wouldn't go around, and then I chased back on, and then then my chain came off later because it had bumped. My chain wasn't on perfectly, and so I'd stopped twice in the race, and then somehow caught back on and made it. Finished my best result in the Grand Prix at that race last year was third. So anything can happen. I'm not sure. The RAD, I was actually not going to go to the RAD, which is this weekend, but I am going now. After Chequamegon didn't go maybe as good as I'd hoped, I was kind of thinking I was going to use the RAD as a drop race, but now I'm going to go and give it my best. Altitude is always a little bit harder for me, but you never know.
You live at the base of a ski area.
Yeah, 240 vertical feet, but
Right.
We have short, punchy climbs here, but we're pretty much at sea level.
Yeah, for sure, a little different. Well, best of luck for that.
Thank you.
And also, best of luck at Belgian World Champs. Are you planning on going to Belgium?
I am, yeah. It's going to be a quick turnaround from the RAD. So I get back from the RAD on Sunday, and then we fly out on Monday to Belgium.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I'm super excited. I've always wanted to race in Europe. I always, when I was younger, thought I would try to get over there someday for a mountain bike World Cup race, but it just never happened. And so to get the opportunity to race in Belgium and Flanders, where the crowds look like they're just insane, and I'm excited to just be a part of it.
I am super curious to see how, see the course, and from a spectator point of view, and B, will the crowds come out? Do they care about gravel? Do they care that Jenna Rinehart is showing up from the U.S. to go shred gravel in Flanders? I'll be super curious. It's been in Italy the last couple of years, and it's not American gravel racing. What do you know about the course over there?
Yeah, I've been trying to research as much as I can, trying to figure out what tires and what gearing to bring. The area itself looks kind of similar to what we have in the Midwest as far as terrain, like hills, and not a ton of hills, but some short little ones. And so I'm excited for that because that terrain suits me better than some other terrain. But they don't have gravel roads like we do in Iowa or Minnesota. They're very narrow paths, like canal kind of stuff, and some forest little paths. So it'll be very interesting. I'm sure I'll be starting pretty far back because we don't have a lot of UCI races to get points in the U.S. And then it sounds like there's going to be some of the top road racers coming after the World Championships this week. At least in the women's race, there's some of the top names are on the start list for Gravel World Championships too. So for me, it'll just be like, how much can I move up and how many people can I pass? It does look like there's some turny sections and maybe like a little bit of single track sections, which for me, when there's a little bit of technical parts of the course, that suits me well. It brings some of the mountain bike skills out a little bit. Maybe some rain in the forecast, so there might be some mud. And it sounds like there's some cobble sections too, so that'll be very interesting.
Yeah, that will be very interesting. We'll be anxious to hear all about it. And you earned your way there. There, nobody in the U.S. who stayed in the U.S. could have more UCI gravel points than you, because you won the one UCI gravel race in the U.S. What was that race like? It was Fayetteville, Arkansas, and to me that just sounds like hilly.
Yeah.
Ozark Mountain hilly.
It was hilly, kind of like the Big Sugar course a little bit in Bentonville, but not, I would say the gravel wasn't quite as chunky. I didn't see too many people with flats or like you do at the Big Sugar, but Yeah, the course actually suited me really well. I actually, so that race was a mass start. They started the men and women together. So sometimes you always never know what place you're in or how that's going to turn out. But I actually had some bad luck at the beginning of the race. Within the first couple miles, I dropped my chain and had to get off and fix it, and lost the whole pack. That the women were all still with the fastest men at that point. So I kind of really thought, oh, I don't know if I'm going to see the front of the race again. Chased hard for a long time. There was actually, so they started the pro men and women together, and then they started the amateurs a few minutes back from us. So later I got caught by a few amateurs, which eventually I was able to catch on a couple of their wheels and get a little bit further back up into the field. But yeah, that race I just kind of chased all day until towards the end, and all of a sudden found myself with the top two women. And then there was a couple twisty downhills that it was also kind of wet and soggy. It wasn't raining for that race, but it had rained a bunch there the couple days before. So it was definitely wet in spots and some twisty downhills. And I got a gap on a downhill, and not really intentionally, but looked back and realized I had a gap and just decided to go. I think we were a few miles from the finish, maybe 5 miles still, and held it to the finish. And didn't really realize when I first went to that race that if I won that would automatically get you a spot at the Gravel World Championships. But found that out after the race and decided, sweet, maybe I should go try to fulfill that dream of racing in Europe. Yeah, I'm not getting any younger, so better go check it out and see what it's all about.
Oh, that's awesome. Did you know that you caught the front? You know, one of the dynamics of the women and the men racing together is it's all mixed up, and you sometimes don't know if somebody's up in a group 200 yards in front of you, or if you're in the front. Like, did you know you had caught the front person?
Yeah, I mean, I think the women's field kind of knows sometimes that we try to help each other out a little bit, and like if someone asks, like if you can ask usually one of the other women, like, hey, who's up the road yet? And they'll usually tell you. I think we all know what sometimes a struggle it can be to know where you are. I was there with my whole team, the Mazda Orange Seal team as well. So I had a couple of teammates in the race, Marissa, Boaz being one of them, and I caught her midway through the race at some point, and I think I'd asked her, and then another racer, Crystal Anthony, had told me, I think, who was up the road. So I did know once I got up there that I didn't think I would see the front, but then when I saw them, I knew that those were the two women that were in the front of the race.
Yeah. One of the things that I think this Lifetime Grand Prix has brought to gravel racing in the U.S. is separating the men's and women's field on the elite side. Do you like that?
I do, yeah. I think it's cool to see the Grand Prix leading the way and showing what can be done, and seeing other races now for next year already, like Mid-South and Steamboat are going to be switching. I think I get some races doing a mass start makes sense, but these big ones that are attracting big enough fields, I think for safety, for fairness, and I think everyone can still have a great experience and not take away from what the amateur experience is, but also make it more fair for the women and the pro men too, and just safer, I think, too. I love it. I think it's great. If our field is deep enough, I feel like I'm coming to these big races to race against the opportunity to race against other women, and so if we don't get that as much if you're mixed, or like the gaps become so much bigger in the women's field when we're mixed with the guys. So you see much more tighter women's racing and more dynamics play out when we get our own start.
Well, Jenna, best of luck. Oof, you got a full month ahead of you, and all of them are pretty significant events. So best of luck, have fun, smile, enjoy the ride, and we'll be excited to see how you come out on the other side.
Thank you. Yeah, it's, at this point, you got to do it for the fun of it for the most part. So it's easy to get caught up in results and placings, but yeah, just try to enjoy it and have fun and enjoy the scenery and also the competition as well.
Yep, for sure. Well, thanks for coming on Bike Talk with Dave. I love chatting with you, and again, enjoy the rest of your season.
Thank you.
I got to give a big shout out to Jenna for joining me. Thanks so much. It was a treat to have you on. Now, we all got to be wishing her luck at the UCI Gravel World Championships in Belgium this weekend. And a couple weeks after that, at the Lifetime Grand Prix finale at Big Sugar. And of course, you all should stop by her and her husband's shop, the Nicollet Bike and Ski in downtown Mankato, Minnesota, next time you're through Minnesota. I also need to give a shout out to our Northwoods friends, Dan and Therese, who've hosted us and our friends at their lakeside cottage for the past 20 years, and they have become great friends. As well as our new friend, Jim Borchat, who's been staying with us at the cottage for the past couple of years. Jim is the owner and founder of Rapid Storage Systems, and he sent us all home with an incredible goodie bag of straps, clips, and fasteners. He was kind enough to send us all this awesome mag snap once we got home. It's an ingenious wrist wrap with magnets that keeps all the little screws, bolts, and washers right on your wrist, so you don't need to hold those disgusting parts in your mouth anymore. It's awesome. I love it. I would encourage all of you to check out all of the organizational stuff offered by Rapid. You can clean up and organize all of the cords and hoses in your garage, hang all those spare tires that are laying in the corner. You can hang them in your van, you can tidy up that messy cord drawer, and you can even get all those charging cords for your lights, computers, shift levers, and derailleurs cleaned up and organized. Stuff really is awesome and well thought out. Check it out on rapidstorage.com, and you can also find it on Amazon or any other major retailer around the country. Thanks, Jim, for helping us organize all of our stuff. I also want to thank you for tuning in today. I appreciate it, and I would love it if you would rate and review on your favorite podcast platform. That's great support, and if you want to support this show financially, feel free to drop some coins in a cup at buymeacoffee.com. Just look for Bike Talk with Dave. Be sure to give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and even a subscriber on YouTube. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you have a great week. And remember that nothing compares with the simple pleasure of riding a bicycle.